Hello everyone, and welcome to my B&B Fan Club channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Across town, Bill sat in his hospital office, his desk cluttered with charts and paperwork. He was a meticulous doctor whose steady hands had saved countless lives. But his own life was full of regrets. At 40 he was divorced, childless, and troubled by the decisions that had brought him here. Years ago, in a period of cautious optimism, he stored his sperm as a precaution against an unknown future. It was a decision made in the aftermath of his failing marriage, when the thought of starting a family still looked feasible. Those vials now languished in the hospital's cryobank, a forgotten reminder of a life he no longer believed in. Luna and Bill had only met once, at a community hospital fundraiser. She had been helping, serving coffee to fatigued doctors and benefactors, her face beaming despite the exhaustion in her eyes. Bill had noticed her, not for her beauty, though she was striking, with dark hair that fell in waves and eyes that seemed to hold a quiet storm, but for the way she moved through the crowd, as if she were looking for something she couldn't identify. They exchanged a few words, mostly niceties, but Luna felt a spark, a transient connection that lasted in her thoughts long after the event was over. Bill, engrossed with his own problems, hardly recalls the interaction. Luna's best friend, April, was the one who altered everything. She worked as a hospital nurse, was sharp-witted and fiercely loyal, and had a talent for bending rules just enough to get her way. April had observed Luna's struggle for years, witnessing how each negative pregnancy test devastated her friend's spirit. She had held Luna's hand through the tears and heard her whispered anxieties of being alone forever. April was not the sort to sit passively. When she overheard a chat in the hospital's break room about the cryobank, and how Bill's samples were still kept there, an idea germinated. It was irresponsible, unethical, and distinctly April. But she couldn't endure watching Luna suffer any longer. The plan was straightforward in conception. April had access to the cryobank due to her work at the hospital. She was aware of the security standards, schedules, and weaknesses in oversight. She could sneak in, remove one of Bill's vials, and send it to Luna's fertility clinic while passing it off as a donor sample. April would ensure that Luna never learned the truth. It was a gift, April told herself, a means to give Luna the child she so desired. The morality of it gnawed at her, but she dismissed it. Luna's enjoyment outweighed the risk. Late one night, April carried out her plan. The hospital was silent, and the corridors were barely illuminated. She rushed fast, her heart racing as she accessed the cryobank's storage unit. The vial was there, labeled with Bill's name and a series of numbers. She placed it in a chilled container, her hands quivering not from fear of being caught, but from the weight of what she was doing. By morning, the vial had arrived at the clinic, labeled as an anonymous donor sample. Luna, oblivious of the lie, went into the treatment with a fragile hope she hadn't felt in years. Weeks later, Luna sat in the clinic's waiting room, fingers laced together, awaiting the findings. When the doctor called her in, his smile said it all before he spoke. Positive. She was pregnant. Luna's hands flew to her lips, and tears streamed down her face. She contacted April, sobbing with excitement, and April chuckled through her own tears, relief pouring in. For the first time in years, Luna felt complete. She began to dream again, picturing a nursery, a tiny hand in hers, and a future filled with romance. But the secret couldn't stay hidden forever. Bill, as thorough as ever, has a practice of reviewing the cryobank's records. It was just a normal audit, but when he discovered a discrepancy, a missing vial with his name on it, his stomach plummeted. He probed deeper, comparing logs to surveillance footage. The trail led to April. Confronting her was like going into a maelstrom. She didn't deny anything, even when he confronted her in the hospital's break room, his voice low and quivering with rage. She told him everything, not Luna's name, but why she was doing it, her desperate need to assist her buddy. Bill's world tilted. His frozen sperm, a bit of himself he'd almost forgotten, was out there, part of an existence he didn't want. Bill wanted answers, but April refused to let Luna go. She begged him to let it go, to give her friend this one piece of happiness. Bill wasn't heartless. He saw April's pain in her eyes, as well as her loyalty, which drove her to cross lines he never imagined. But he couldn't let go. The transgression, the loss of power, tore at him. He engaged a private detective, determined to discover who had received his sample. It did not take long. The clinic's records, while confidential, were not impregnable. When Bill saw Luna's name, it brought back memories of their brief interaction. He didn't know her very well, but she was suddenly carrying his child. Bill showed up at Luna's door, shattering her world. It was a wet evening, similar to the one in which this narrative began. He stood there, drenched and solemn, his face a mask of turmoil. He didn't accuse her. He knew she wasn't involved, but he told her the truth. The donation was not anonymous. She was carrying his child, which had been abducted without his consent. Luna's joy turned to ashes. She listened numbly as Bill described what April had done. The treachery wounded worse than anything she'd ever experienced. April, her confidant and biological sister, had lied, misled and used her. Luna's initial reaction was to protect her unborn child. She gripped her stomach, still flat but full of life, and promised Bill she was not going to let this kill her. She didn't care how the child came to be. She already adored it. But Bill was not present to take the child away. He had no idea what he desired. All he knew was that he couldn't avoid the reality. He was outraged, but also lost. He hadn't planned for it, hadn't wanted it, but the prospect of a child, his child, sparked something in him that he couldn't ignore. The months that followed were tangled with anguish and uncertainty. Luna separated herself from April, unable to forgive the treachery. April, overcome with remorse, attempted to contact someone, but her calls remained unanswered. Luna's pregnancy advanced, with each ultrasound serving as a bittersweet reminder of the life she desired and the sacrifice it had her. Bill, meanwhile, was dealing with his own feelings. He visited with Luna on a regular basis, not out of obligation, but because he felt a connection to the child and to her. Their chats were tentative and guarded at first, but they eventually became a bizarre form of solace. Luna noticed the man behind the doctor, who had his own scars. Bill recognized Luna's courage in the way she maintained hope in the face of adversity. When Luna went into delivery, Bill was there, not as a doctor, but as a parent who was still learning how to be. The birth was long and difficult, but when the baby, a girl with Luna's black hair and a wail that filled the room, was placed in her arms, Luna cried. Bill stood there, his eyes watering, feeling an unexpected connection. They named her Hope to honor the frail dream that gave her life. But the story did not stop there. Luna and Bill's relationship remained difficult, a tenuous bridge connecting two individuals bonded by an unplanned child. Luna hard to forgive April, even how much she missed her. April, troubled by her decisions, left the hospital, unable to confront the point where she had crossed a boundary she could not undo. Bill, too, felt the weight of the truth, questioning whether he'd done the right thing in pursuing it. And Luna, cradling her kid, understood that love might emerge from shattered things, but the cracks would always stay. The rain continued to fall outside Luna's window, but this time it was a lullaby for Hope, who was sleeping happily in her cradle. Luna caressed her daughter's small fingers, her heart full of love and sadness. She had her child, her dream, but it came at a cost she could not have predicted. Bill, across town, cracked a slight smile as he glanced at a photo of Hope supplied to him by Luna. They were a family, each in their own damaged way, united by a twist of fate that had forever altered their lives. April, on the other hand, was eerily peaceful. She stood in her apartment, staring out over the city from her balcony, a slight grin on her lips. Her thoughts were racing, not with terror or indecision, but with plans. She had been watching Luna intently for weeks, noticing the quiet longing in her eyes and the delicate way she spoke about family and children. She had also been watching Bill, who was always powerful and composed, but vulnerable in ways that few saw. The three of them were linked by unseen strands of ambition, desire and unsaid tension, which were about to tangle in ways neither of them could have predicted. Luna's mind raced as she repeated the hospital scene over and over. She had gone in for a usual consultation and noticed a file placed carelessly on a desk. The contents had surprised her. A secret document that filled her heart with both hope and anxiety. She understood what it meant, yet she hesitated. How could she confront Bill without revealing herself? Then there was April. April had always appeared to be an ally, warm and friendly, but she was also capable of subtle manipulations that made Luna apprehensive. April had proposed a casual supper that night, and Luna had consented, sensing an opportunity to delve further. As they sat in a stylish small Italian restaurant in West Hollywood, Luna couldn't help but observe April's poise, how every gesture seemed calculated but effortlessly charming. "You seem distracted," April observed casually, tilting her head. Luna felt both uneasy and attracted as her eyes sparked with electricity. Luna claimed to having a lot on her mind, as she stirred her drink absent-mindedly. "Things that I'm not sure I can explain." April leaned forward, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "Sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones keeping the biggest secrets." The words hung in the air like a challenge, sending shivers down Luna's spine. She wanted to know what April meant, but her gut told her to wait. Patience, she told herself. Everything would become clearer in time. Meanwhile, Bill was coping with his own problems. The board meeting earlier that day had been stressful, with investors demanding results and rivals surrounding like hawks. Bill had always excelled under pressure, yet there was a strange anxiety gnawing at him. Luna's name came up in a private chat. Her loyalty was called into question, and he wondered for the first time if he truly knew her. Later that evening, he returned to his apartment and discovered April waiting in the foyer. She greeted him with the same calm grin, as if she had every right to be present. "Bill," she said casually, "we need to talk." Bill raised his brow, wary. "About?" "You'll see soon enough," April said, leaving the sentence incomplete and the tension high between them. Back at Luna's flat, the night darkened and the city lights cast sweeping shadows across the floor. Luna found herself standing at the window, peering out at the illuminated streets below, contemplating the possibilities. She knew her life was about to change in ways she couldn't predict, yet a part of her felt prepared, ready for confrontation, revelation, and the impending pandemonium. April had always been mysterious, capable of both charm and manipulation depending on the situation. But Luna had learned over time that April's loyalties might change, and that her reasons were as unpredictable as the California wind. Luna understood she was caught up in a sophisticated power play involving not only hearts, but also futures, legacies, and ambitions. The next morning, the city buzzed with its customary vigor, unaware of the personal storms gathering behind closed doors. Bill was in the office, deep in work, when he received an unexpected call from Luna. Her voice, albeit calm, conveyed a sense of urgency. "Bill, we should talk. Can you come over?" He paused, aware that whatever she had to say would be crucial. "Of course. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When he arrived, Luna was already waiting, sitting on the edge of the sofa, her stance stiff but composed. Bill approached with caution, unsure how to begin. "What's happening, Luna?" he inquired, sitting near her. Luna took a big breath. "What I've discovered has the potential to change everything. And I believe you deserve to know the truth, even if it is tough." Bill's heart raced. He had been through crises before, but the weight in her words made him apprehensive. April arrived soon after, and her presence immediately changed the atmosphere. She handled herself confidently, and while her smile was pleasant, both of them saw a sharpness in her gaze. "Good morning," she murmured calmly. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Luna said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her chest. "Actually, April, I think you need to hear this too." Then, in a moment that would define the trajectory of all their lives, Luna disclosed her discovery. The secret was explosive, threatening to expose carefully constructed facades and hidden agendas. The room fell silent as each of them processed the significance of her remarks in their own way. Bill's face turned pale, and his usual composure faltered. He looked between the two women, attempting to understand the ramifications. "How did you find out?" he managed to ask. Luna's gaze met his, steady and unyielding. "It does not matter how. What matters is what we do next." April smiled softly, almost imperceptibly, but with a sense of triumph. She had been a part of this all along, directing events from behind the scenes, but she knew better than to show her hand too soon. The relationship between them transformed instantly. Alliances were tried, loyalties were questioned, and the city outside seemed remote and inconsequential in comparison to the drama occurring behind the walls of that opulent apartment. Over the next few weeks, the tension rose. Bill tried to keep control of his life and empire while negotiating the complex web of connections with Luna and April. Luna, determined and resilient, found herself in the midst of an unexpected storm, forced to confront secrets that called into question everything she thought she knew. April, ever calculating, moved like a shadow, affecting events with precision and subtlety, ensuring that the twists never stopped and the stakes remained impossibly high. Their interactions were packed with emotion, compassion, flashes of wrath, jealousy, and fragile moments of trust. Every speech was a war of wits, and every gaze was a silent power play. Then came the critical night, a gathering intended to celebrate a tiny win in Bill's business dealings, but which swiftly transformed into a crucible for the buried truths they had all been avoiding. Words were uttered that could never be taken back, glances were exchanged that betrayed secret intents, and the city below seemed to hold its breath as the drama unfolded in its entirety. By the end of the evening, nothing would be the same. Alliances had altered, secrets had been revealed, and the once predictable future had become one of uncertainty and possibility. Bill, Luna, and April had been eternally altered, joined together by a web of intrigue and emotion that could not be readily unraveled. In the weeks that followed, they all learned to negotiate this new reality. Bill, humbled and apprehensive, recognized that control was an illusion, and that trust needed to be earned rather than assumed. Luna, stronger and more resolute than ever, accepted her newfound clarity and resolved to take control of her own fate, no longer a passive participant in the drama unfolding around her. April, as enigmatic as ever, remained a wild card, a figure with the ability to cure or harm depending on her actions. And so life went on in Los Angeles, dazzling and sparkling on the outside, but beneath the shimmer lay layers of emotion, mystery, and tension that ensured the story of Bill, Luna, and April would never completely finish. Every gaze, every whisper, every unexpected turn carried the weight of history, and every day had the promise, or threat, of discovery. They had made it through the storm, but they knew that in a metropolis like theirs, the next twist was never far away. And as they gazed out over the infinite lights of Los Angeles, each of them realized one unbreakable truth. Nothing in the world of power, love, and ambition was ever simple, and nothing could ever be assumed. The morning after the meeting, the city felt different to Luna. Quieter, almost waiting, as if Los Angeles was holding its breath. She sat at her kitchen table, swirling her coffee, rehashing the events of the previous night. Bill's guarded glances, April's subtle smiles, and the way secrets appeared to hang between them like delicate glass ornaments waiting to shatter. Bill arrived unexpectedly, his look unreadable, a mix of worry and lingering frustration. "Luna," he said quietly, "we can't keep dodging this. Something happened last night, and we need to know where we stand." Luna held his stare, unflinching. "I understand, Bill. But it's complicated. There's too much at risk to respond hastily." April's voice broke through the tension, smooth and deliberate. "Complicated, yes, but sometimes the only way to move forward is to face the truth, no matter how messy." She leaned against the doorway, her eyes gleaming with that trademark blend of charm and calculation. Bill gazed between the two women, sensing the weight of their quiet power struggle. He recognized then that alliances were no longer apparent. Trust was a fragile commodity, and the next move would decide everything, not just for them, but for everyone involved in this delicate, high-stakes game.